The fact that we're not used to seeing two storylines. I mean, you had the two different points of view. You had the two different books. Yeah. What were the challenges of putting the two storylines together?
It was a lot. I mean, even one book can be very hard to turn into a movie, because there's often, you really have to make choices, big choices. So with two books, this was even more. It was hard. We had so much material, but it sort of was clear from the beginning that David's book was going to be the overall story. It is really, it is a mythical journey of a father trying to save his son, trying to understand his son, and eventually realizes that he needs to let go in order to save the rest of his family, save himself, and eventually also save his son. So that had that quality. So we used that mostly, I would assume, or to tell the bigger arc. And then Nick's story, or his point of view, was we made bigger choices. We didn't tell his whole story, but it was what I thought was the most interesting part about it was that it from the inside told how hard this struggle is, how easy it is to relapse. So I wanted to get really very close to inside his head while he was going through this. So we chose to not show him living on the streets or those things that were talked about in the book, but we wanted to see how he has those pivotal moments when he relapses, and we thought that was the most interesting part about it, because we wanted to. I want to feel for him. I want to feel what he goes through. I want the audience to feel and understand it too, so we can care for him in the way David cares for him. And that because of that and those two points of view, I think it's in a very simple way you can lay out a very very complex, emotionally complex subject.
Timothée, I think that any actor has incredible responsibility to the vision of the director and to do justice to any role they perform. But having to play Nick, who's actually, it is his story, did that add an extra layer of responsibility?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for any artist, you understand that sometimes people will like your work, sometimes people won't, but there's a certain anxiety in playing someone that if they don't like it, that would be some sort of transgression. And it was amazing meeting Nick before the film, because one of the things he was very clear about was saying that he understood this was a representation of his family's life, and that by the laws of reality and the fact that we are not David and Nick, it could never be exactly what it was for them. And it would be cavalier or something to say that we went through what they went through. Yeah.
And how much access did both of you have to David and to Nick through the whole process?
I had a lot of access, and the actors too, if they wanted. So they did meet up, but they weren't. I mean, they were very cool about it. They had seen my film. We had met up a couple of times. So my previous film, and they trusted me. So that was incredible. Actually, they trusted us to take the story and turn it into film. And as I was working on the script, and I had them read it, and we talked about it, and then I, at some point, went up to Marin, to David's house. Even spent a couple of days there. So we really got very close, and I got to ask a lot of questions and really was let into their family, and it was really important for me to get it right, to get the authenticity of it. It's why I fell for the books too. I mean, I like the huge story, the big story, the mythical story, but also just the little details. I really fell in love with that family, and they allowed me in. But they never. I mean, they came on set once, David and Karen up north, right, when we were doing the beach scene, and then Nick came once. So they didn't want to intrude in our process. They wanted to be there for us and supported us, led us into their lives, but they didn't want to intrude.
Was there any other research that you did on meth addicts and?
No, yeah, I mean, it felt like getting using the very specific manifestations of like use in a methamphetamine addict, but that are different than like the heroin sequences or like the camera going around naked college. That would be a sequence where he was high on heroin. So that felt very specific to get right. And unfortunately, there's a plethora of stuff you can just find online, even of what people look like in those conditions. And I had access to not only Nick, but a number of people that had been in this kind of situation before. But more than a using movie for me, it's really it's either a family movie first and foremost, or a recovery movie through the prism of family, I think. And so, if anything, it felt more imperative to get a sense of like outpatient or inpatient rehabs and what the experience would be at a young age, like I said before, to isolate totally from your environment, but in the name of like saving yourself to some degree or in totality, and what that would feel like. And I think it's in one of the title cards, or it's just something online that's out and about. But Nick relapsed, I think it was 13 times over 7 years. Is that what it is? Or over 8 years? So that's, that it felt more important to capture that feeling. That's like that phone call scene was so daunting to me. And I'm proud of like the way we were able to do it, because he's making the phone call. He's been sober for a very long time. He's doing everything right, but that's like what I feel like that moment about putting the phone down is like it's as Timothy Hutton's character says, or one of the doctors in the movie. It might not be that he's unwilling. It might be that chemically he's unable. And I won't get into it now, but Beautiful Boy addresses how methamphetamine addiction, even he explains it neurologically, is really at a young age is kind of like the craziest thing to go through, or craziest habit to kick. So